You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, the weekly podcast for small town people with big dreams and ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week we'll cover a topic meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you to live big in your small town. Although it has its challenges, nothing beats small town living, and we're committed to sharing the best of what's working in the communities we serve. So enjoy this episode, and we hope it helps you to bloom where you've been planted. Today's guest is social media expert Molly Knuth. In 2016, Molly was a high school English language arts teacher, and she had become a stay-at-home mom. And she was feeling a little bit like she needed more. She wanted to do more and contribute more in her community. And she saw a need to help small businesses connect to their customers in a better way. She lives in the rural community of Cascade, Iowa. And like most small town businesses, they were still relying primarily on word of mouth advertising. And so that's what we sit down to talk about today, is just the need for small town businesses, small business owners to embrace digital media marketing as a way to connect with more of their customers. And, you know, the coolest thing about Molly, she and I chatted a bit about this, but there are a lot of experts that we can all follow if we're trying to figure out how to do social media better. Not that many of them really understand the dynamics that exist in small towns. And this is what Molly brings to the table in a massive way. You're going to love this episode. If you own a small business and you're looking for ways to freshen up your own social media strategy, she's got an awesome freebie that we'll link to in the show notes. But also, if you are an individual that supports small business owners or entrepreneurs in your small town, I encourage you to think about how you could bring this kind of education to those individuals in your community, because social media is not a fad. It is not going anywhere. And Molly will help you learn how to do it better. So without further ado, here is my friend, Molly Knuth. Molly!
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? I'm so thrilled to talk to you. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, I feel like are hitting at least my community in a timely way. So I have introduced you already as a social media expert. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you became this? Like kind of just the quickest version, I guess. I know it's kind of hard. Like condense your entire personal history and professional history into a quick overview. But I think it's always interesting, right? How people need to do what they're doing and where you're doing it. So please tell us a bit about your story.
Sure. So like you said, my story is kind of long, but that's okay. So my name is Molly Knuth. I live in the small town of Cascade, Iowa. It's population 2,500. We're in the eastern side of the state near a couple of larger cities, Dubuque and Cedar Rapids being two of those. When I was growing up, I am actually a native of Cascade. So I grew up here. You know, it's got that small town vibe. I always loved it. Wasn't really sure when I left for college what I was going to do, but I figured it out. I met my husband, who is also a native of Cascade. So then it was like, well, we're going to just move right back and we're going to move to the family farm. So he's a farmer and they do crops, cattle, hogs. And I got my degree in teaching high school students reading language arts. So I came back and I taught middle school for a year. I taught at our local high school for a couple of years. And as our family grew from one kid to two kids to three kids in a very short time period, it was then decided that for the both of us and for the betterment of our family, that I would stay home with the kids. So after a couple of years staying home with the kids, you know, doing all the stay-at-home mom stuff, and I was substitute teaching here and there too, I kind of realized one day, like, I just lost my, I'm going to use your words. I lost my groove. And
I only laugh because I'm like, do you want to say groove, Molly?
I do. So it was just like, I woke up one day and I was like, I just don't have a goal right now. And I've always been a very much goal-oriented person. So I just kind of started like finding small things that I could work on. And lucky enough, my community has a lot of organizations. So I got involved with our capital campaign to build a new daycare center. And we were just kind of spitballing one day, like, how could we spread the word about our message and get people on board? And I just like, at the time, I was very timid. And I just really wasn't, I was just raised my hand. I'm like, well, I know how to edit videos. And they're like, well, how do you edit videos? I'm like, well, I did take a couple classes in college and I know how to use like Photoshop and I can put a video together if you want one. They're like, that's great. So then one video for the daycare campaign turned into 5 and 6 and the whole community was buzzing about it. And so that was just kind of like, oh, okay, this is a really cool thing. And then people would like say, hey, Molly, can you help me with this? And it would just be like another little photo job. But what really got me going was when my dad and my cousin opened a business together and they got me involved with helping out in the office. And I said, you guys, I think we should start a Facebook page and just put it out there so you guys can update your photos and like feature your jobs and your projects that you're working on.
What's the business?
It was a metal business, manufacturing steel, like sheets, panels. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I started with that. People around town started noticing, and then another business asked, and another business asked, and another business asked. And pretty soon I had some clients that wanted me monthly to manage their social media accounts. So it kind of took off. And at the time, this was 2016 when I was starting that social media marketing on Facebook for these local businesses. I really didn't understand that this could be a real thing. Like I went to a Facebook training where the instructor at this workshop was like talking about how small businesses can use Facebook and social media to grow their following. And I raised my hand in the middle of it. And I said, so you're telling me I can make a living helping people with Facebook? She's like, well, yeah. And I said, I am in. So now in the last couple of years, I have just kind of grown to more clients. And I also do teaching and instruction for people who want to manage their own accounts, but need a little help.
Right.
So that's a very long-winded story, but that's
okay. So I love your story because I think you are a shining example of what I believe every small community has. Like there is this latent potential just sitting in the people that live in our communities, and we don't know what it is until, like you have this situation where it's like a class that you took or something you learned along the way, you were able to apply in a meaningful way in your community, and people suddenly pay attention and you suddenly find some like passion and energy around it. And I think that is beautiful. I think it's a beautiful way for us to grow entrepreneurs in our small communities. And you're such a great example of what that looked like. Okay. So 2 questions I want to ask, because I will just say that I love that realization that your kids, while they're your everything, and I think if as parents, that's how we feel, but that you felt like you didn't have a goal. Because parenting isn't a goal. Parenting is this all-consuming thing, right? And I never felt fulfilled with the many goals that might be present in raising children. It was never all I needed or wanted. Did you have a struggle with that? Did it feel hard to acknowledge that? That's the first question. And then the second is, did you have any shame or difficulty around abandoning, and there's air quotes, no one can see me, right? But there's air quotes around abandoning the degree that you pursued?
Oh my gosh, great questions. So first of all, to address your first question, I guess growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like when people would say, oh, what are you going to school for? I'd be like, I don't know. I'm just undecided, because I really didn't know. I had a lot of interests and I had a lot of abilities, but I didn't know how to channel that into something. So the only thing I really knew that I wanted to do was have a family someday. So when we started growing our family and having kids, I was like, yeah, I do want to be a stay-at-home mom. And for a while, it was really great and I loved it. But like you said, it's just like, I don't know, you just kind of feel at some point, or some days are great. And some days I'm like, I just feel like I could be contributing more. And like, I just feel like I want to help support our family, like financially. And I want to be able to be a model for my kids of like a mom who can be a mom and a mom who can also help with a larger vision in the community or in a business or whatever that is. So I can't say that when I started doing some of this stuff that I really had a vision of what I'm doing right now and how things are going for Molly Knuth Media right now, but it's just kind of evolved to that point and it's been great.
Well, I think you also, just before you answer your second question, I think you've just touched on something that I think is a real challenge for anybody that identifies as a multi-passionate individual, which I would as well. I mean, I think if you read my book, like I talk about that I didn't know at all what I wanted. I knew how I wanted to feel. Like I wanted to feel like all the things you just said, like I was contributing and I really wanted to climb a ladder. I mean, if I'm being honest, that was part of my deal. Like I thought, oh, I'm going to like kill it, corporate world. Like, but the corporate world, like, what does that even mean? I had no idea. But I think that's one of the challenges is figuring out, you use the word channel, which I think is really smart, like how to channel that into things that are good for you, that give you that drive. And I don't know that having the vision fully laid out is actually necessary to achieve that. So I think the fact that you're able to kind of take what rolls your way and pivot as necessary. That's part of how a multi-passionate and potentially multi-talented, right? If you have many things that you're kind of good at, that's really, it can be really hard to discern, right?
Yes.
What you should say yes to and what you should say no to.
Oh my gosh. Yes. My husband's constantly telling me, you can't say yes to everything. And I'm like, I know, but I just love so much.
And I'm like, I think I maybe could though.
Oh gosh.
Okay. So then talk about your degree. Cause I just think if nothing else, what I want is for the people listening to this, if they're in a position like you found yourself, like I found myself, where potentially the degree, like my husband is a farmer and his degree was landscape architecture. It's just a challenging thing to explain to people, right? And when you're sitting with it by yourself, you feel okay with it. Like, well, it's okay. I'm not giving anything up. It was good. It was good when it was there. And now I want to do something different. But explaining that to people outside of us is not always so easy, right?
Yeah. And I will say, like, okay, so I haven't been teaching since 2013, and I've had my business, Molly Knuth Media, since late 2016. So we're talking years. And just like a couple weeks ago, somebody at the grocery store was like, so are you back to teaching yet? I'm like, no, I have my own business now. And they're like, oh, well, you going to go back to teaching someday when the kids are in school? I'm like, no, I'm not. Because I mean, I do love teaching, but I feel like I am still teaching. I'm just doing it in a different way. And when I left the formal like teaching at school, I did feel really bad because I loved the kids and I loved seeing their faces when they found the book that they just couldn't put down. Like that lit up my heart like nothing else. And I didn't want to leave those kids behind. And I had so many friends and so many great colleagues and role models at school. And I didn't want to disappoint them either. But I also had to realize like, I was devoting so much time to school. And when we had our third baby, I was like, I would not have any kind of balance in my life. Like work-life balance is hard for me always, but especially I just wouldn't have been able to do it. So it was really hard. Like my husband and I were both on the same page and he was very supportive. Like we made this decision. Our family was really supportive of it. But when it came time to like telling people at school and telling my students, I was just like, oh gosh, I'm getting nervous thinking about it right now. But eventually people, I had to tell them, and I did feel a little bit of shame. And for a while I did feel afterwards too, like, well, I have a teaching degree and I'm still substitute teaching. But it wasn't until I really found my passion of contributing to the community and growing my business that I'm like finally able to be like, I don't think I'm going to go back. I really feel happy about what I'm doing right now. And I feel like that is serving a really big purpose. There's a lot of people who love being stay-at-home moms, and that's their big purpose. And there's a lot of people who love teaching, and that's their purpose. And I just felt like my purpose landed somewhere else. And it wasn't right or wrong. It's just for me.
Right. If I could give anything to young people, if I could give any one gift to young people, it would be somehow that like self-acceptance, to be totally okay, actually just moving through the world the way that you do. And knowing that if it's good for you, it's good for other people, even if other people don't get it, right? Because I really do think that, and there's no way we can impart that on kids, right? We can tell them that, but they have got to find their way to that themselves. Everyone's journey to that looks really different. And I still struggle with it, right? Like that's something I'm always probably going to struggle with is I'm a people pleaser by nature. So I want to do the things that people kind of expect me to do. Like I want to meet people's expectations, right? And anytime you do something that departs from that, it can feel kind of hard. But I think, like you said, there isn't a right or a wrong. It's what feels really good to you and allows you to, like you said, if contribution matters, I always say this, like figure out what the things are that matter to you and then fill your life with the things that allow you to have those things, So if contribution matters, contribution super matters to me. That's a really big word, actually. And it matters. I want to feel like I'm contributing at home in my community, to the welfare of everyone around me. So, it's so much fun. It's so great. Okay. So now here you are, you're Molly Knuth. You're an agency now, which is super cool. And what I would love to get your take on is prior to hitting record, we were chatting a little bit and I was telling you that I think small town, small businesses, and I say both of those things because I think there's a distinction. I think the way we move through the world in small towns is different than larger communities.
Yeah.
And small businesses like a single mom and pop shop or somebody running even a storefront all on their own, right? Maybe they have a couple of part-time people. I think, and I've seen that there is somewhat of a resistance or maybe just a lack of understanding about the need for any sort of web presence, whether that's a formal website or any sort of social media. And so can you speak a little bit to why it is so important? Because I think there's this potentially this misconception of like, I don't need to reach people that are several states away with social media because I'm just a small local business. So what difference does that make, right?
Right.
So can you speak a little bit to that? Because that's my favorite thing about what you do. There's a lot of people that do social media for other businesses, but you are doing it for the exact person that I just described, right? A small business owner in a small community.
And I should say too, like I started this and I just was helping people in what I enjoyed. So back in 2014, my husband and I, while I was a stay-at-home mom, like just transitioning to stay-at-home mom, we were building a house. And I just watched these people coming into our home our future home, who could put things together with their hands. Like they could take 2 pieces of wood and then they can turn it into a wall, or they could come in and they could like hook up water. Like, I mean, it was so amazing. I just had so much more appreciation for people working in the trades that had skills like that, because I would like reflect on the day and I'd be like, well, I mean, I can do things like intellectually and I can write and I can read and I can communicate, but like to make something with your hands, like that was so impressive to me. So when I got started with these local business marketing on Facebook, a lot of my first clients were these contractors and people in the trades. And when they're out there working, they're focused on the job. And they're focused on how they can fix this problem that their customer is having. And what my first clients were telling me, they're like, well, I just don't know. Like, I know that people need to see what we're doing, but I don't know how to do it. So that's where I could come in and I'm like, well, I'm really good at communication, writing, reading. I can tell stories. And I can take what you're doing and I can turn that into a story that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. So it's not necessarily like just putting out pictures of your products or things like that all the time. We're talking about how you, this local plumber, you're the only plumber in your community. Somebody called you at 3 a.m. because their basement was flooded and you were the person in the town that everybody goes to. And, you know, because you're the person who's in that town, you woke up, you got out of bed, and you went right to their house. Here's what the problem was. You assessed it, and then here's what you did to correct it. So instead of just being like a pamphlet, we tell stories throughout my customers' advertising. And that's where the importance comes from when you have a local business. You're right. There's local businesses who they might be the only option in your town for whatever product or service it is. So they might feel like the word of mouth advertising or the traditional forms of advertising are working just fine. And that's okay. But what I like to do is say, okay, let's think about what you really do. Because there's like the surface level of what you do. And then there's a deeper level of like, how do you follow up with your customers? How do you feel when they can flip that light switch and they know that light's going to turn on if you're an electrician? And it's just like, there's so many levels to what local businesses do. And there's also this level of like how they contribute to the schools and how they volunteer on their economic development and how they are part of the chamber. Local business owners have so much going on. And when they're in the middle of what they're doing, it's hard to see all of the ways that they are giving back. And I like to come in and use social media and websites to feature all the things that they do and really like shine a spotlight on them because it's needed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, majorly. And I love this. I didn't know that your initial clients were contractors and people in the trades. You are touching on so many things that I think are so super relevant. And so I just want to riff off of a couple of them. I think that I've said this to my boys. So I've got 3 kids, right? So 2 boys and a little girl. And I've said to the boys, like, if you guys want to have your own business, figure out a trade that really lights you up and then go learn that trade. And then we will build one hell of a business helping you deliver that or serve your community with that. Because I do think that people can write their ticket. They can write their ticket with companies with businesses like that. And I love that that's who you're serving, because I would say it's hilarious to me because I don't think most tradespeople would ever think to do what you're helping these people do, just that storytelling aspect. I think they don't give themselves enough credit. That's what I really think. Oh,
yes.
They go, well, what do you mean? Flipping on a light switch and the light comes on, duh, that's my job. But like, I love that you started this by saying it was I'm totally in awe of people that do those things. I am honestly totally in awe of it because I suck at all things.
Yes, I am not
like use my hands. What? Yeah, I use my hands to type and I give high fives.
Oh my gosh,
I shake hands.
You don't want to see me with a drill. It's
right.
not good.
No, exactly. So I love that that's how you started because I do think that and I would just say it like this, a blanket statement. I would say most local businesses do not give themselves enough credit for all that they do.
For sure.
And the whole idea that our local businesses drive our economy forward in multiple ways, not just because they have a business, right? That those dollars get reinvested into the community, but in the way that they show up for the community, whether it's school or whether it's sponsoring events. And I love that you're giving them a way to tell that story. So I'm thinking about like a lot of the people I know in my community that do, even if we would focus on the trades, that ability to get over the feeling of bragging on themselves. Like, do they struggle with that?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
and so that was a big thing. They're like, well, I feel like I'm bragging if I talk about how I donated to XYZ. And I'm like, well, it's not bragging. And that might be where it's easier for them to offload it to me because I'm from the outside looking in and I'm seeing all this cool stuff.
Right.
So sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody who has that outside perspective and they can kind of highlight all the things you're doing that are different and unique and giving to the larger community or giving to your clients that maybe you just have done it for so long that you're like, well, that's just how I do things. And so that's why it's good to have like some outside perspective. I mean, you don't have to get somebody from outside to come and do your social media, but maybe have a conversation with somebody who can pinpoint those things that make you unique and set you apart. And then that's what you talk about on social. It doesn't, and I try to tell my clients this, I don't want you to go out there and like create a whole bunch of new stuff, like a whole bunch of new campaigns and a whole bunch of new promotions just so you have something to talk about on social media. That's not the point of it. The point of social media from the very beginning was to connect people who are like, well, Facebook was started to connect people in schools and colleges so that they could meet up with classmates. And then it evolved into connecting families and connecting friends from far away. And now it's like a global thing, connecting people around ideas and innovation. But to get back to what I was talking about for local businesses, I don't want them creating a whole bunch of new products and services and offers. I want to use social media just to show all the cool things they're already doing. And that is sometimes in a post about a donation that they made. Maybe I know like we've got a lot going on in my community right now, but we've got a lot of local contractors who are donating in-kind gifts to our new swimming pool. And they're going and they're moving dirt for free or they're wiring stuff for free. And that's something that we share out because it's not like, oh, give us a pat on the back. It's just saying, hey, here's what we're doing. And if you see this project, make sure you stop and thank the people who were part of the capital campaign to get it done. Like, and you can recognize everybody in the community who is part of it so that it's not just bragging on you, it's giving kudos to everybody in the community who pulled together to do this. So it's just showing the things you're already doing. Obviously, as a business owner, you need to be aware of like stopping in the middle of your day maybe and just taking a picture or a video here and there so that you have that piece of content that you can put up. Yeah, but it's not like you have to go and put out a blog post every day or you need to go set up an online store if that's not something that's in your wheelhouse. Like just documenting your days and what you're doing, that's enough to give you that leg up, especially if you're in a small town where not a lot of people are utilizing social media yet.
Right. Oh my gosh. This is so exciting to me. I want to talk websites in just a second. I know you primarily, work in social media, but the one thing with social media is I manage Facebook accounts for a couple of the organizations that I'm on the boards for. Their community organizations. And I can tell you like firsthand how frustrating it is to me when I'm trying to do a thank you post for something that's been done, like the people have, contributed or they supported or whatever. And I can't even tag them on Facebook because they don't have a Facebook presence. Like, I just want to look at our local people and say, you guys are missing out. Like, and I honestly think it just comes down to fear. I think they're just completely afraid of it because they don't understand it. And I honestly still think a lot of it comes back to this belief that that is someone else's thing. Like that social media wasn't created for them except personally, because they don't see the reason to, like, they don't believe that that investment of time is going to drive any additional business. Can you speak to that? Because
for sure. Yeah. So I will say like when I started, I do think in the last 2 years, like I've become more public. My businesses have become more public in their social media. So I feel like people are adopting it more and more. And so it's just kind of becoming part of our local scene. Like, oh, I saw you on Facebook, or I saw that. But at the beginning in 2016, there were some businesses it ran the gamut. Some people had a Facebook page that was never updated. Some people had a website that they built in 2008 and it was still the same in 2016. And then we had like a local boutique who was just killing it. Like she really was killing the social media game. And so it just takes a couple people in your area to really set the bar and set the tone, and it'll kind of help shift the whole community. But like you said, sometimes there are objections. So especially in a small town, like your first objection might be getting over fear. Like, I just don't like being on camera. I just don't like being on video. I don't want to put my stuff out there. I don't want people to see it. What if they give me a negative comment? I hear that all the time. And my thought is, this is my counter to that objection. You guys, we live in a small town. There's going to be people talking. And if you have a Facebook page, it just gives people an outlet. I just keep going back to Facebook because that's where everybody is at. Everybody has
Right.
But this could be Instagram, Twitter, your website, whatever. Like, yeah, if you have a Facebook account, it does give people the opportunity to leave a nasty comment. Like if they're a disgruntled employee or if they had bad service or whatever. But in a small town, they're going to go out and they're going to tell their friends about that anyway. If they come to Facebook and leave that comment, you have the opportunity to address that. You can
at least
follow up. Yes, you know.
Right.
So that's my answer to the fear side of it. The second thing is, I also think I get an objection because people don't have time, because they're managing. If you're a small business owner, you are doing whatever it is you do. Plus you're trying to balance the books. Plus you're trying to do all the HR forms that you have to do when you have an employee. Plus you're trying to do your marketing. Like that's just a lot to do. Plus your family and all the organizations you're probably part of.
Yep.
So time is definitely a big thing. And my answer to that is just go out there on Google, or if you want to, go to my site or my Facebook page. And there's a whole bunch of ways that you can make social media not as frustrating and not as hard. So it doesn't have to be creating a 3-minute long video, because that 3 minutes takes a long time to edit and get to what you want it to say. But you can just put up a picture with a very catchy post or catchy copy in the text portion. So it is going to take time. But if you really, really don't have that time, trust me, there are people in your community who are looking for part-time work, and they can be probably hired to help you manage that. And it would be really fantastic for you and them to work together in partnership. So yeah, there's definitely objections, but I do think that, like I said earlier, if you just get a couple people in your community to start and to see the power that this can have, not only for your business, but for the community, I really think then people get on board. They adopt the philosophy, they see the progress, but you just need those few people to get it started.
What I will say to that is we too have a couple of local boutiques that do just a phenomenal job. And I feel in my heart, and again, no one's ever said this to me because I don't know that I've ever talked about this exact topic with a larger group of business owners, but I do think that there's a lot of people that will say, well, sure, it's easy for them because they're a products-driven company. They're a business that people shop at, right? So they're retailers versus, and that's why I'm so stoked that you started out with people that are not retailers, because I do think even from a Chamber of Commerce standpoint, even economic development standpoint, we talk a lot about how do we support the service providers? Because it's just different, right? A lot of the service providers in our town are chamber members. They don't have a storefront that we get to trudge into and take pictures in, and they feel harder to support from that standpoint. But I'm telling you, if they had Facebook pages and every time they came into my home and they did a bang up job, I could actually give them a public shout out. I think more people would do that, but they're not on Facebook, or at least not their business isn't, right? They might personally be.
Okay, I'm going to address a couple things here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to speak to what you just said. They might have a personal Facebook, but they don't have a business Facebook. And here's why you need to have a business Facebook or a business Instagram, whatever. When you have business profiles for your accounts, it opens up the door to so many new tools and data points that you don't get from a personal account. So you can schedule posts and you can see when people are online. That's my biggest thing. I can see that 2:00 on a Thursday afternoon is a slow time for my Facebook page because nobody is grabbing their phone at 2:00 on Thursday to open Facebook. They're too busy doing other stuff. So when are people online? When their kids are already in bed. So I'll do my posts on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. after my target audience of 25 to 45-year-old adults have put their children in bed and now they're sitting on the couch. They're probably picking up their phone. So you can, when you have a business account, you can set up your posts to schedule at times when people are going to be online.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing. The second thing is you get all that data back. Like how many people saw this post? How many people shared this post? How many people commented on this post? People can tag your business, like you just said, and they can give you a shout out. Those are some of the most powerful ways to get your business out there. I mean, you have to have consistent presence too, putting up posts and things like that. But the most powerful forms are when people in the public are just evangelists for what you do. And they just say, oh my gosh, I got this great service from my local floral shop. And I just can't say enough about them. Look at this beautiful picture of the arrangement they gave me. You know, so when somebody does that, that's huge. And when you have a business page like that, it gives them the opportunity, like you said, to tag them in it. So that's really important. If you haven't set up a business account yet, you need to go do it. Also, because on a personal page, if you're posting business stuff to your personal page all the time, you're going to exhaust your audience, your friends and your family and all those people who follow you. And they're just going to be like, all she posts about is her skincare products or whatever. And so it's like, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that people are participants in this story. And if you haven't read the book yet, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, it will really rock how you look at your business and your business marketing. Because when you go out and you put out posts on Facebook or put out any marketing assets in general, you need to make sure that your audience is the biggest part of that promotion or that feature. And another reason you don't want to post from your personal page all the time is because it violates Facebook terms of service to use your personal page for business purposes. And I know people firsthand who've been put in Facebook jail, or they got their account deleted because they were really a business who was set up as a personal profile, and that is just not allowed.
Right. Okay. So, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So on Monday, the episode that's going to go live on Monday is actually a solo cast. I'm sharing kind of the content from this session that I did this last weekend at a conference called Love the One You're With. And I'm talking about how to pour back into our existing customers if we're small business owners, or pouring back into the people that already live in our small towns, right? So you use the word evangelize. I use that word several times in this coming episode on Monday. And it makes it so much easier to thank your customers if you have a business profile on Facebook. You can give them shout outs publicly. So it's not just, I mean, it's taking both ways, right? Like I think about as a customer, it gives me a chance to be highlighted as a loyal customer as well, which is a huge marketing tool. Yes. It's a way to show deep gratitude for the people that love your business, right? So honestly, I love that you just said, like, you need a business profile. People, like, get out and do it. And I think that's really what I hope we can sell in this episode, is just the importance of it. Because Facebook is not going away. Social media is not going away. If nothing else, it's going to become all the more important, because I also believe, and I think it's important to maybe address the trend, that as we are thinking about it's not even getting new business, it's not even getting new customers necessarily, or new people to our community. But when people come to visit, right? Anytime somebody comes to visit a community, what is the very first thing that they do? They go online. They Google it and they see what comes up. So as a business, if you do not even have a web presence of any sort, like you don't even have a Facebook account, you make it nearly impossible to be found and to be discovered. And I don't care what anybody says, even for local small towns like my little community here, we're missing out on potential traffic. We are missing out on potential business by not having a web presence.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So many things that you just said that I want to speak to. So I guess my big thing is, like, social media, websites, digital marketing is not just this fad, flash in a pan thing that's here today and gone tomorrow, right? It's something that has evolved definitely over the past 10 to 15 years that it's been in existence. But at this point, it's definitely something that people have come to not think, oh my gosh, look how cool their Facebook page is. It's like, this is something that people have come to expect. And like, I know some of my customers or some of my clients, like some of my clients are in the service industry. And I do have some people who are more over here in the retail, but like some of my retail customers, like we post their daily offerings, right? And so if I miss that for a day, we get messages. Like, so it's people are coming, like we have set this expectation up of consistency. And when you are consistent with your posting or updating your website, when you talked about that Google, like you're going to click into Google and search Cascade, Iowa, or search this business. If you have a Facebook page that you consistently update, if you have a website that is updated, if you have any other forms of social platforms, when they Google you, you're not only just going to have one hit on Google, you're going to get a series of hits on that first page because you have several online presences. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening know, like when you go to tackle a website build or a website update, it's a large project and it can take weeks and months and you might need to bring in help. But websites are really important because that's your owned space online. Like if Facebook or Instagram were to shut down tomorrow, like how do I connect with my customers? So that's why it's important to have some kind of website. It doesn't have to be fancy. Like I know some of my clients have websites that have blogs and online stores and things like that. And because that's what fits their business. But if you're a service provider, like I think about my electrician or I think about my earth moving company who are on my client roster, we just have some basic pages like their homepage. We have a team page where we can talk about how this got going, who works for them, who they are, because that's really important. We have a contact page so people can submit emails and have all their contact information as well as directions. And then we also have a page, then this could be like, this is where you can start infusing your own unique business needs. We have a page that is like a services list, and then they can click on those services and they'll be linked over to blog entries about each service. So when you have that blog on your website, yes, it's another thing to update, but it increases your Google score because you're updating your website consistently. And it also gives you that opportunity to tell stories. So we'll feature a client that they worked for. We'll talk about their problem. We'll talk about the service we decided to go with, and we'll kind of document that through videos, text, and photos. And then we talk about how, when we were done with the project, how now it solved our customers' problems. So that blog portion, it is going to take an investment of time, but it's what's going to really tell stories on your website and get people interested. And then you can feature those blogs on your Facebook page. You can tweet about that new blog, things like that. It just all comes together. And all of this, like I started off saying, it's not just a fad or a flash in a pan. It's really just this level of customer service, right? So we are out there to serve our customers the best way possible. So if you are a business who doesn't value customer service, just having a Facebook page is not going to make your customer service experience any better. It's not going to grow your business. You have to be really dedicated to serving your customers in the best way possible. And that's how you're going to have in real life, in traditional forms of media, as well as digital media. That's how that customer service comes full circle.
Right. You know, earlier you had said that, you know, as local businesses, a lot of us just want to rely on that traditional word of mouth. If that's your primary traffic source, Facebook amplifies that by a factor of what? I mean, that's actually all social media really is it's this beautiful way to allow people to share the best of what they love. Like I go out to Facebook on my personal page and I'll say, I'm looking for a recommendation for this. And that's my friends just tell me. They tell me all the things. And then of course, if it's a business that's got a Facebook page, they tag them there. So it's kind of ironic because I suddenly, I was looking down at my notes and I had WOM written down, right? So word of mouth written down. And I thought, well, duh, like that's, social media is just next level word of mouth.
Oh my gosh, I say that all the time. Social media is just word of mouth on steroids. Like Jay Baer, who is like a social media expert, he says, content is the fire and social media is the gasoline that you pour on the fire.
Right.
So if you're doing something great in your community and people are talking about it, you better be on social media so that they can talk about it even more, you know, because people are talking and you want to just give them the opportunity to communicate in the way that they are communicating these days, which is online, on social media platforms, on their smart devices. So when you have a presence, you can tap into those conversations in ways that you can't when you aren't on those platforms. Like word of mouth is a great thing. And
it's amazing. Right.
In small communities, like word of mouth makes and breaks you and makes and breaks your business.
Yep.
But that word of mouth, like you just said, it can be amplified so much when you are present on social media.
Right. And there's one other thing that a business profile allows people to do that I think shouldn't probably be like we shouldn't neglect to mention it. It's advertising.
Yeah, we didn't even go there.
I know, which it's a whole separate topic, but I want people to really understand that, okay, so like I'll use my business as an example. Anytime that I go to speak in a community, like let's say I've gone to another community, it's not even my own, and we're doing one of these women's events, right? I do these customized women's events for women in small towns, those buzzy, like exciting kinds of events. But in order to really promote them, being able to geographically target like the exact demographic of audience that you want to see there to drive eyeballs to the event page or to drive them to your website or whatever it is that you're trying to promote. Holy, is that just like, it is it is the, again, on steroids version of making paper flyers and posting them in all your area communities, which is something I still see people do. We still do that. Do you guys, I don't know if you see that. We do that in our small town. There'll be a flyer and you'll be like, who can take them to Lemoore and who can take them to Lisbon? Like all of these neighboring communities. And that's okay. So that's great. That's one thing, but this is like the digital version of your paper flyer. And it really is important. Yeah.
And I will say, so a couple things on this. Yes, you are so right. Advertising is huge. And there are a couple different philosophies behind social media marketing. So if you're a small town, small business, just make sure that whoever you're following in giving you guidance on social media marketing is of that nature too. Because like for the first couple years of my business, I was just following these experts in social media marketing, but they were not aware of how small towns function a little bit differently. So my whole philosophy is to always have consistent, great content. And then we strategically use these advertising methods like you talked about when we need to. So for example, and this isn't just for businesses, like these are for organizations, nonprofits. So one client I work with is our local booster club for the high school. And they have a fundraiser that's coming up and they really wanted to get more people. Like the fundraiser was successful through like a traditional mailer. And then we had a couple posts about it on Facebook, but we really wanted to amplify that. So what we've talked about is we're going to use Facebook ads and we are going to target a specific demographic. So I think what we're going to do is just do a specific radius around our town and we're just going to blanket that area with paid Facebook ads. And the power of Facebook ads is like, if I wanted to, I could just say, I want people from the ages of 25 to 45 years old who are interested in sports. And then I set the budget myself too. So I can say, I don't want to exceed $5 a day, or I don't want to exceed this campaign costing me $100, right? And this is another tip too. Like when you go to look for how to do Facebook ads, some of these businesses and people who are giving advice, they're talking about advertising budgets in the thousands and millions of dollars. Now, as small town businesses, we're probably not running Facebook ads at that level. So I think it's really important that you know you can set your budget and you can decide what works for you, for your business or your organization. And that's what your limitations can be. So it just gives you that opportunity. Like you said, you can still, and I still think traditional marketing methods are really great because you are still going to have in a small town, you're going to have people of all ages, of all communication methods that want to go to the coffee shop and see that flyer hanging there.
Absolutely.
But we also have younger demographics of people who are coming up who want to see that where they're at, which is on their smart devices. So you need to think about both of those ends when you think about the marketing for whatever it is you're promoting.
Exactly. I hate almost to even bring up advertising just because it is such a rabbit hole. And there's a lot of really bad information out there. I totally agree with that. But our community organizations, like our major fundraisers, we've done that. We have chosen and set a budget ahead of time and said, we're not going to spend over $200 over this 2-month period, basically. And here's the posts that we're either going to boost or we're going to create ads for. Like it was always very strategic because it can get away from you really fast.
Yeah. But and anytime you can shut it off if you are like, this exceeded what we needed.
It's not working or it's not working at all. We need to tweak a piece of it,
And there's like that, it makes your heart sink to think about, but we've all been there when you've paid money to print these flyers and there's a huge typo on it that nobody caught. And you're like, now we got to go.
I know, exactly.
Hang them up again. The beauty of digital is like, all it takes is 2 clicks of a button and it's fixed.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's a very, very valid point is that social media and digital marketing does not replace newspaper advertisements. Not for my small town, it doesn't, right?
Right.
We also still have a local radio station that people pay to put ads on, because there are this core group of people. It all depends on who your audience is. I think that's really,
it all comes back to that.
Yeah. I mean, if you truly are targeting a demographic that's older, social media, you still need it. You still need to have a web presence. You do. Because again, at some point, our 60 and 70-year-old people are going to be as adept at Facebook as we are. That's going to happen. Because it's just going to, you know what I mean? It's just going to continue that becomes the expectation. So,
and depending on the kind of business or organization that you're putting out there, like I know for some of my services or some of my service providers in various industries, like their audience might be on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
Because like I think about my husband who comes in out of the fields and he sits on YouTube and watches like farming videos. And so, I mean, if you're in the ag sector, YouTube might be your platform that you're going to explore. But if you are a creative and you're in your small town and you're doing graphic design, you want to go to Instagram or you want to go to Pinterest. So it's really going to depend on what you're doing. But digital marketing is for everyone, whether you are a school, whether you are a business, whether you are a nonprofit organization, whether you're a city or a city entity. That is such a powerful communication method for your audience.
Totally agree. Okay, so you're going to come back on my show, right? You're going to come back because I think. Well,
that I'm an avid listener, so I will definitely be back if you need me.
I think that we've touched on some really hopefully valuable things for the people that are going to be listening to this, and I hope dear listeners, I hope that you share this episode with your Chamber of Commerce. I hope that you share this with your local economic development groups, because if your community hasn't hosted a community training or development opportunity for your local businesses around social media marketing, now's the time. And Molly would be a great resource for that as well. So as we wrap up, I've got 2 questions for you. First, my final question is, what does living big in a small town look like to Molly Knuth?
Oh gosh, I've been stewing on this question. So
it's my only canned question of the interview.
What am I going to say? I don't know. Living big, I think, is in a small town sometimes, like just bringing our whole conversation full circle. Sometimes living in a small town can, like, you feel like you have to live up to these expectations or this spot that you put yourself in, right? Like I moved here and I was a teacher and that's what I thought I was going to do. But as I got older and I grew and I found kind of my niche in the community, living here has really opened my eyes to how much bigger of an impact our small town can not only have like on its citizens and the people who live here and who are from here originally, but some of what we're doing is connecting us with other communities. And we're having conversations about how we can grow rural, how we can be more impactful on our whole area, and how we can look at the gifts and the skills and the unique things that we offer and how we can just like really set ourselves apart. Because I'm sure you guys feel that way in Oaks or wherever you're listening from. Like, I just love where I live. We've got like a little corner of the earth that is just awesome. And I just want to share that with people. And so really living big in a small town is just loving where you're at and figuring out how you can celebrate it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Last thing. How and where can people connect with you? And I think you might have some cool freebies for people. And by the way, I will link all of this in the show notes. So if people are listening and they're like driving, don't get in an accident to write this stuff down. It'll be in the show notes on the link. But what do you have for people? Because what I saw, I loved. I was like, ooh, yes.
Awesome. So you can find me at Molly Knuth Media on most social platforms. So on Facebook, I do weekly live training. So if you're someone who needs education, like I talked about earlier, I do Monday live trainings on just little tidbits and actionable steps that you can start implementing right away. So Facebook is going to be where you want to find me first. I also have Instagram, some YouTube tutorials out there, and you can go to my website where you can read my blogs for more tips, or you can purchase some products from my store if you really need some real targeted tools to help you. But for people who are listening, go to the link that Rebecca has in the show notes. And if you click that link, it will ask you for your email address, and then I will send you 7 days of my best engagement boosting posts. So all you have to do, you'll get this calendar. Each day has a different idea and it gives you instructions on what to do. And then you just have to tailor it to your business. Plus, there is a YouTube tutorial to spell it all out for you.
Oh my goodness. That is a fantastic resource for everybody listening. Well, I know this isn't the last I'm going to see of your beautiful face. I get to look at you, but people are really missing out. But I know this isn't the last I get to see of you. I would love the opportunity. Eventually, we've got to collaborate and put something together and blast this out to because I like I said, if chambers aren't hosting these kinds of events for just good education or economic development, we're missing out. We're missing the boat. I think we need to bridge that gap for our business owners. The fear and the I don't have time and I think it's going to be hard and all of those things that are legitimate for the business owner that already feel stretched too thin, right? We as these organizations that have, we're planting our flag that we support local businesses. And this is one of the ways that I think we can do that.
And I'll just speak to I was doing my business, growing it, just doing all the things for the first year of my business. And then our chamber reached out and said, hey, Molly, we've got a lot of local businesses who are interested in social media, but they either don't know what to do or they're not sure how it would fit their business. So they just asked me to host a business after hours. And we just held it at our local tavern. Yep. And people could come in, they could have a couple drinks. And I just put together a brief presentation. Well, what I thought was brief. But as I was going through things that I just have internalized, kind of talking about our service providers earlier, things that I just did and I just knew. And when I talked about it, it was people looked at me I probably looked at that instructor that first day when I said, you mean I can do this for a living? So people were just floored with how social media could work for them in a small town. So yes, have chamber events. Our young professionals had me, a different community of their young professional organization had me do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I got to talk to them. Then finally, if you are someone in a community and you're kind of like me at the beginning where you're not sure exactly how you fit in, but I'm good at graphic design or I'm a fast learner or I've used social media for 10 years. I've probably a thing or two I could help people with. This is a legitimate business opportunity for you. And you can build it part-time. You can go online and find resources to help you get your skills built up. This is definitely an opportunity for people looking for being an entrepreneur and building their own business too.
Right. Freelance work. It is the wave of the future. And I think what you just said, I love, that's a great way to leave this conversation for our listeners. If you are sitting out in the middle of your small town, wherever you might be listening from, and you're thinking, like she just said, I am good at this, or I could try that. The only way you're going to know if it can pivot or launch into something bigger is to serve somebody with that skill set. So find somebody that needs the thing you know how to do it for them and see what happens from it. Because honestly, then if at the end of that, there's a successful result, you have a happy customer, your first happy customer, and you won't know until you try. And so in the spirit of trying, I'm so thrilled that you came. And I think everything that you shared with everybody is just, it's wonderful.
What a fun conversation. This just felt like me and you, a couple of friends. Well, and for listeners, I fondly refer to Rebecca as my friend from North Dakota. She's North Dakota Molly, and I am the Iowa Rebecca.
I know. I love it so much. And friends, go get your freebies. Check out the show notes and get those freebies and then report back to us. Tell us how it's going. And I kind of did this with Patrick on an earlier episode. I would say, send us all the questions, because if we need to do just a live Q&A as a follow-up episode to this, I would be so stoked to do it. I'm sure Molly would agree that would be a fun use of our time. So thank you, friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Oh, you too. Talk soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk Show. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe on Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the easier it will be for other small town friends to find us. We encourage you to keep on living big in your small town, because the size of your life is not determined by your zip code.